Yvon, I think they liked it. That's good. That's a relief.
Wow.
Congratulations on the film. Are you pleased?
What's that?
You pleased with the film?
No.
You must be pleased with the film. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an excellent piece of work. The guys at the back were asking me, do you think he likes it? I think he probably does, yeah. We heard a little bit earlier about the reaction it got in Finland, but what has been the reaction to it in your experience as you've gone to various screenings and got feedback?
My gosh, we've won a prize at just about every film festival that we've shown it at.
No pressure. No.
And, including places like Korea and all over the world. And,
Right.
The intent was never to make any money on this thing, but to get it out, as propaganda.
Yeah. And
it's been very successful, I think. It's been hundreds of thousands of people who've seen it. And I think it's helping to change some policy.
Right. I mean, we heard about how it's already impacted in Finland. Were you aware of similar movements around the world to the one that you clearly know a great deal about in the US? I mean, is this an international thing, or is it really happening just in America?
I think it's just in America. I mean, the era of dam building isn't over. I mean, Canadians are looking at building a huge one on the Peace River here. China, I've heard, is building 20,000 dams right now. In fact, there'll be no river reaching the South China Sea in another 6 years. So it's not over. They're building them in the Amazons, but it's a old technology that needs to be re-examined because we have to store water, but storing it above ground and destroying rivers and contributing to global warming and methane releases, and it's an old technology that needs to be rethought.
Why do you think that it has proved so enduring as a technology? I mean, these problems are well known. I mean, you know about the fantastic study by Oxford University earlier this year, which showed that these things always cost twice as much as they say they're going to cost, and it's not like we don't know this stuff.
Well, it's all about graft and politics, and
right.
You have to ask, well, who's going to benefit from these dams? And it's the cement companies that are owned by the son-in-law of the senator or whatever. I mean, if you dig into it, it's always it makes no economic sense. I mean, if you're a businessman and trying to drum up some money to go build a massive dam, you couldn't justify it. It has to have massive subsidies, and so it's all about people making money under the table and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's the Chilean dams.
Right.
We just killed five dams in Chile, and the guy who did it is my friend, Doug Tompkins, one guy. He just came out with a newspaper ad every 2 weeks in the Santiago papers, and each week he featured a politician who was going to make money on this thing. And now no politician wants to touch these dams. So he did it single-handedly.
Yeah. The film, doing a film like this is a bit of a departure, I think, for Patagonia. You've not really done anything like this before.
No, we've never done anything like this.
Why did you choose to go that route? I mean, you were the instigator of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit of a risk. I mean, you can imagine the Tea Party kind of
Bring them on.
Bring them on. Okay. But I mean, you run a very successful business, and people boycott successful businesses because they don't like the messages that they're giving. You don't care about that.
No, I mean, these are my customers right here.
Right. Sarah Palin isn't buying Patagonia.
No. I hope not.
Not likely to start soon either. But the film opens with those, that incredible footage of FDR kind of opening the Grand Coulee Dams on great feats of mankind. And then he says, those few of narrow vision. And he's talking about you. Now, and it's FDR, he's from the good side. I mean, you do have a vision. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit? Because it's quite a broad vision, but it doesn't yet resonate maybe outside of these walls anyway.
Well, I think the main reason I wanted to do this film, I've been a dam buster for all my life. I hate dams. I love free-flowing rivers. And I've been involved in taking out quite a few dams. And but we need, there's 40,000 obsolete ones in the United States alone that need to come out. And in fact, when you think about it, every edifice that man builds is going to have to come down someday. And in a lot of cases, they're done by private companies and stuff, and when they're finished, they bankrupt the company and they walk away, and it's left up to us taxpayers to pay for the remediation. And so I'd like to establish that when you do a massive thing like a dam or that you'd have to put money into a trust to restore it. You can't just walk away from it. And whether it's a nuclear reactor or whatever it is. And so that's one reason why I did it. And we thought about just giving money to an environmental organization to do the film, but we're kind of control freaks at Patagonia, and we decided to control it ourselves, and we got these two guys that we think are the two best filmmakers around for this kind of stuff, and so...
Yeah. Did you know Katie Lee at all?
What's that?
Did you know Katie Lee?
I wish I did when I was younger or something. Actually, she's an older woman. She's 94 years old. And she's quite a songwriter. And River Rat, and she hung out with Ed Abbey and that gang. And in fact, when she saw the film for the first time in Telluride, she came up on stage, and she walked up on stage and was going to moon the crowd. She started dropping her drawers, and then she looked back and she said, it used to be cute, but I don't think you want to see it anymore.
I mean, we were watching the film about Yosemite yesterday, and the things that she was saying and the things that you guys were saying in the Valley at that time, quite similar in a way. This idea of a rucksack revolution came from that time. Do you think that survives? Do you think that's a possibility?
No, I think society's gone to sleep.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's there anymore.
You don't. The young people you got at Patagonia.
Well, the millennium generation, I think, the really young ones,
right,
13 to 20-year-olds, they've got it.
Right.
And I think that's our only hope, really, because this generation is not going to do anything to solve our problems. But I think these young, very young people, I think they get it.
Because I mean you see that footage, and it seems to me that your philosophy as a businessman is the same philosophy that suddenly thought, these pitons are killing the climbing here, and we've got to do something about it, and we can climb in a pure way. And you just get lighter and lighter with less and less until you can do it well and do it with the least amount of stuff, and you don't leave anything behind.
Well, when I was a kid, I was brought up that you make a mess, you clean it up,
Right.
and that doesn't necessarily work for corporate America.
Because the margin is so often in the not clearing it up.
Yeah, that's right.
So, taxpayers subsidize...
Leave it up to somebody else.
A taxpayer-subsidized business, which sounds a lot like socialism, which is a little bit ironic because in the film, they're talking about the environmental left. Now, I'm guessing that you don't actually have a huge amount of interest in politics yourself. You just want to run a business that does it right. But does that make you smile when they talk about that? Because, you're making a profit and you're doing it right, which kind of doesn't make them look good. So turning you guys into the enemy in a way kind of supports that very wasteful capitalistic model, as opposed to a not wasteful capitalistic model, which seems to be working quite well for Patagonia.
Yeah, it's, I couldn't care less about making more money, but by doing the right thing, it always ends up making me more money.
There is a moment in the film where the guys are kind of trying to get past that dam, and they're, the goons on top are telling them this, that, and the other, and what is that phrase? Homeland security crops up.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, it is. I mean, coming from Europe, it is slightly baffling that this kind of thing goes on, but there seems to be a conflation between activism and terrorism, which is really terrifying, actually. I mean, it's insidious because it shuts down debate. Well,
the real terrorists are the guys standing on top of the dam. They're right. The terrorists.
Yeah. I mean, do you sense that somehow by rocking the boat you're attacking the American dream in that way? I mean, in the same way that.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. But do you have? I mean, what would be your American dream? I mean, would you go that far? I mean,
well, it'd be nice to have a society that makes decisions based on science. That'd be nice.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Was there a moment? I mean, the science thing is obviously deeply important to you, and you've been through a process where you've read a great deal and you think a great deal about that. Did that come to you very early? Has that always been the case, or was there a moment where you thought, I need to educate myself about this? I need to do this properly.
Well, my education has been traveling.
Right.
And I've done climbs on every continent, including Antarctica, and I've been to Africa many times, and you see the change that's happened. Africa is basically a sacrificial continent. The rest of the world really doesn't care about Africa, except the Chinese, who see it as a source for resources. Things are pretty grim out there, but that's been my education, is just traveling and seeing what's happening around the world, and I'm very much of a pessimist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, famously.
I don't see much reason for optimism, but there's not much difference between a pessimist that says, "Oh, it's all over, don't bother doing anything," and an optimist that says, "Oh, everything's going to be fine, don't bother doing anything."
Yeah.
So, I need to sleep at night, so even though I'm a pessimist, I feel like I'm a little part of the solution rather than completely part of the problem.
Sure. We just had the midterm elections. Both houses are now Republican, and we will soon, I read, have a Secretary of State for the Environment who doesn't believe in climate change.
They're smarter than 99% of the world scientists. These doofuses that don't even have a passport. The majority of our congressmen don't even have passports. They've never left their little burg.
I mean, how did that happen? How did it happen?
Well, I think it's because of education. Or,
Right.
instead of spending money on education, we spend it on armaments, and we see the results of it. And we have 50% of the American people don't believe in evolution.
Right.
You can't have a democracy without an educated electorate.
Can I suggest an alternative to you that what's been killed here is curiosity rather than necessarily education? Because, we know lots of people who didn't have a great education and then went out in the world and thought, wow, there's an awful lot here to discover, and immediately got down and taught themselves that. And maybe, that's the thing that's disappeared. And I wonder how a society in a way turns its back on.
Well, every empire collapses. There's been no exceptions.
Right.
And I think the American empire is collapsing.
Right.
I think, in the business world, the fastest growing businesses are the ones that collapse first. You grow like this, you die like this. And I think, the United States is only a couple hundred years old, and it's grown so fast, but it's ungovernable. And, the best we can accomplish in politics is to cut the baby in half and compromise. And, compromise is the work of the devil, and it never solves the problem. And so it's an ungovernable country, and it's just at the same state that Soviet Union was, the British Empire. I think it's going to collapse.
Right.
And probably should. Nature loves diversity. It's always making new species, and there's a reason for that, because there's strength in diversity. And it hates accumulation. It hates monocultures, monoagriculture, things like that. And that's what we do. We try to pull everything towards the center where nature wants us to go out. And it can't go on.
Yeah.
The center doesn't hold, as they say.
Indeed. And so much of American progress in the American century was built on the notion that, nature was there for our benefit, that it had been given to us essentially by God.
Inexhaustible.
And it was inexhaustible, and you could go on forever doing this stuff. And obviously now we're discovering the limits of growth, and there's no idea about how you might approach that and still allow people to dream about a better life.
Yeah.
But that's conceivable. You can do that. You can still have a meaningful and a life where you feel that you're contributing and making progress for yourself, but without the scale of impact that we've had. That has to be some cause for optimism.
Well, I spent 40 years with Patagonia trying to clean up its act. Following our resource base all the way to the farmer. And every time we find that we're doing something wrong, we try to fix it. And we've been influencing lots of other companies to do the same. And in fact, there's quite a movement among companies to green themselves and stuff. But every gain we make is wiped out by growth, which nobody wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. And it's, there's nobody going to convince McDonald's not to advertise to young children to get them hooked on fast food, because they have to grow 15% a year as a public company, otherwise their stock price goes down. And
the share price is a cult, basically.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of followers, and the alternative is presented as essentially being terrifying, which is why you have a guy standing on top of a dam saying that you're a terrorist and a threat to national security, because you want to see a river restored to what it was in the first place, which was a perfectly good.
Well, if you attack capitalism, you're you're a communist.
Yeah.
There's no alternative.
Yeah, but I'm suggesting to you that you do actually have a version of capitalism which.
Well, it's certainly not public companies. I think.
Yeah.
The main problem with capitalism is public ownership.
Right.
And I don't think there's too much wrong with private companies.
I mean, you have your own venture capital fund now. Patagonia runs a small venture capital fund, which is...
That's right.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we invest in projects, but not to make a profit, although it usually ends up making a profit. But we invest in technologies, like we're investing in a company that has a method of dyeing fabrics that uses no water, because water is a big factor in pollution, dyeing fabrics, and it uses no water. And another company that's a dry cleaning thing that uses no chemicals, uses just CO2, that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, Patagonia does come under fire sometimes. It's been under fire quite recently over funding for Mark Brown, the ecologist who's been studying the amount of plastic on beaches and the nature of plastic, and a great deal of it, it seems, turns out to be fibers from polyester acrylic clothing, which is coming out of washing machines into the sewage system and out into the sea. And it's sort of quite a critical piece of Patagonia for not funding that research. You would say that, well, we don't fund research.
No, we would if we think we're the cause of it or whatever.
Right.
But our own findings have not found that connection.
Okay. So but I mean, you wouldn't think that more work needs doing?
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't really know.
Right, okay. But I mean, you pulled out of chemical cotton in the past. Would you remake your business if necessary, if it turned out that, this guy was right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You would, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did the same thing with down recently.
Right.
We were accused of using down from live plucked geese.
Uh-huh.
And so we sent 4 people to Eastern Europe to find out if that was true. And they found out, no, it's not true. However, the geese are being force-fed for foie gras. So that was a good news, bad news. So we found some geese that are not being force-fed for foie gras, and they're not being live plucked, and so now, we changed.
Yeah. The taking out the Elwha dams, I think, meant a great deal to you personally.
It did. I mean, 25 years ago, it was the way these things go, these dams, is usually one person comes up with an idea of taking out a dam.
Right.
And then there's 2 or 3 get together, and then they start a little group, and they support themselves with bake sales, and finally a study gets done, and the scientists get hired to study taking out the dam, and the scientists will spend years doing it because they've got themselves a job finally. And this goes on, and all the politicians are opposing it, and the Corps of Engineers opposing it, and blah, 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 and this goes on and on. Finally, finally everybody grudgingly agrees to take out the dam.
Right.
So they take out the dam. The river flows again, and everything's cleaned up. The fish are back, and there's not one person that says, gee, I wish we had our dam back. I mean, it would go a lot faster if they would just do it right away.
Right.
I mean, you just because it's the right thing to do.
Yes, and I've read interviews with you in the past where you say, I'm not an activist. I I admire activists, but I'm not an activist.
Yeah.
But in a sense, you've had this kind of very steady gaze on issues for all your life. I mean, for the vast majority of your life, since you were quite young, I think, where you just look at pretty much the same problem, which is the planet's unfeasibly high metabolic rate. You know, we're just burning through stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't know how else to do it. And we have to find a way to do it because soon there won't be the stuff to burn through. That seems to me one of the guiding themes of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't care less about being a businessman or everything. And, I only stay in it because I am a pessimist. And I believe that every one of us needs to do what we can with whatever resources we have. Right. You're a writer. You have the responsibility to write about the evils of the world. And, you know, if you have nothing but free time, you need to volunteer your time, do something. For me, my resources is this company that's become very visible.
Because you could have sold it.
And influential.
I mean, you could have sold it years ago. You could be standing up to your waist in a river somewhere permanently, as opposed to just 6 months of the year.
I'm doing that already.
Yeah. But you chose not to. You chose to come back to the office at least occasionally.
Yeah.
And presumably because you're still in it. You're still in the fight by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I'll die in the saddle.
I'm very pleased to hear it. We're relying on you. But do you ever look back over your life and just where did one of the really interesting things about your life is your interest in birds, in raptors. And you trained a goshawk, which is, I'm told, an unbelievably difficult thing to do. As a young man, you know, that level of attention and focus, you know, most young men are running around and doing crazy things, and you have the patience and attention to train a bird like that. I mean, how? Do you ever wonder about it, or you just get on with it?
Well, I think I have that curiosity, but I have a passion for a lot of different sports. I mean, I was very lucky to be in the golden age of spearfishing, you know, at 18 years old, falconry, whitewater kayaking, telemark skiing, ice climbing, rock climbing, mountaineering, surfing. So the golden age is the most exciting times, you know, when you're discovering new things and stuff. But I'm a 75%er, right? I'll do one of these things up to a certain level, and then I get bored, and I go off and do something else. I'm not driven to perfection. Yeah. Which when that happens, you kind of have to give up a lot of other things.
It's the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And if you've discovered a formula for organizing your life so expertly, why would you then go and destroy it by becoming too obsessed? I mean, that's pretty much the definition of insanity. I mean, you know, just finally, you always say, I'm a pessimist. I'm really kind of, it's terrible. But you're always really upbeat.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a pessimist and being happy.
Right.
I'm a very happy man. And but you know what? I've been in enough hair-raising accidents and avalanches and falls, and to where I've accepted the fact that I'm going to die someday.
Right.
And that's, you know, believe it or not, there's a lot of people who won't accept that. And once you do, it kind of frees you up. And I accept that there's a beginning and end to everything. You know, there'll be an end to my company. There'll be an end to the American Empire. There'll be an end to virtually, right. You know, there's beginning and end of everything. And I'm kind of a Buddhist about it. And, maybe, you know, I fish for Atlantic salmon, and they're another one of those great species that's probably going to go out. I fish for them in Russia and in rivers that the temperature gets up to 73 degrees Fahrenheit, which is close to toxic for those fish. You catch one, you release it, and it sits there for half an hour gasping. I've had the same experience in Labrador and in Newfoundland. They're probably on their way out, and it's really, really sad. But you got to think of it as in the long term. There'll be another species probably that'll come take its place, but
we'll take our
sad,
place.
but
Yeah.
that's the way it is.
It's how it is. Yeah. Yvon, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. I am now going to shut up, because you get a chance to ask the questions. But before we do that, we're going to rearrange the stage a little bit so that the people who made this amazing film can come out and you can ask them questions too. But would you just put your hands together for a remarkable man?
All right, it's been an incredible show so far tonight. We've got one more little bit, and that's the bit that involves you. But before we open it up to questions, I want to invite three of the people involved, some of the head people involved in the film DamNation onto the stage. Ben Knight and Travis Rummel are both directors of the film. Ben was sort of the character embedded, so I'll invite them out. And then Matt Stoecker, who is the producer. So join me in welcoming them onto the stage. All right, so I've heard some behind-the-scenes stories here of the making of the film. I think you had some views as well. Let's open it up to any questions. If you have questions, hold up your hand high, and then we have some runners in the audience who, with paddles or with microphones, and we'll get you mic'd in here to ask your question. Are there any questions in the audience right now? All right, right there.
Hi, my name is Seth Bryant. I'm a civil engineer. Hopefully I don't lose my job for asking this question. But there's also a great book called Cadillac Desert that talks about a lot of the things that you guys mentioned in your film, which was excellent, by the way. And I'm wondering why the ecological left, as we're called, doesn't use more of the same rhetoric that the right was using in that corn festival that you guys showed in your film. For example, I think you quoted $345 million to remove that dam. That sounds like a lot of money that could create a lot of jobs. So why aren't we highlighting that to the right that seems to value jobs over the environment?
That's a really good question. We screwed up on that one. We should have had that in there. But no, it is funny. I mean, you know, that scene they show Frank's little badge there, they're literally like, you know, this many people losing their jobs to take out a couple of those dams. Once they're built, there's, you know, one or two people maintaining them. And when dams come out, you're right, there's literally hundreds, sometimes thousands of local people employed for a bunch of years doing the studies and the deconstruction. And then after that, a lot of times there's hundreds of more people that have jobs being river guides and being fly fishing guides and utilizing a free-flowing river and you know, tribes and First Nations being able to reconnect with their fisheries that weren't there. So you're right, we're definitely screwing up our message.
Great. Any other questions out there? Okay, we got one down here in the front. Yeah.
Just yell it out.
If you can stand up, that'd be great.
Hey there, awesome film. Thanks a lot for making it. So it seems that the argument for mega electricity and industrial agriculture over ecosystem integrity mostly comes down to misconceptions about the economic value of ecosystem resiliency. How do you teach people to appreciate timescales on an ecological level?
We just do like time lapses for like 25 years and then speed them up and, you know, game over. I think for us, making this film, the biggest challenge was how do we get people to care about these places, and we went out of our way to find these really compelling characters that would share their passion, and hopefully, that was contagious for the audience, and I think we did a good job. I mean, Katie Lee crushes it. She's 95, and just to see the fire in her eye it's so infectious, and I think, people have to care about these places to get other people to care about them, and it's really inspiring to share that message through the film.
And I would just add, I didn't do a great job there. Both Ben and Travis there were behind the film that was a big showstopper here a couple of years ago, Red Gold, about the mine proposal up in Alaska. So they're quite experienced in sort of trying to use film as a medium to create that connection to place. And so this is just more proof in that record.
Maybe just quickly to add to your question too, some people have asked why we focus so much on salmon in the film and not other species. And the reason, kind of twofold. One, they're just such an emblematic fish, but also, they are an indicator of ecosystem health and river health. And so when you have a healthy run of salmon, we know that there's over 140 species that at some point in their life feed on salmon. So it's not that we're just really into fishing or care about salmon, but salmon is kind of the indicator of bringing a river system back to health. And we should have, this should have been like a 10-part movie, and that should have been one of the 1-hour sections was just the ecosystem benefits of salmon in free-flowing rivers.
Any other questions out there? Hold your hand up high.
I'm just wondering, I think that the idea is really valuable, but we still need electricity. Have you means to negotiate? Where can we get rid of the ones we're not using? And just in terms of finances, where do we provide for the things that we will need, and where do we provide a financial plan to show what we can get rid of?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think it's a common misconception that all dams produce hydropower, and in the U.S. I think it's only 4% of dams are actually contributing to the power grid. So, in the cases of the Elwha and the Condit Dam specifically, 3 wind turbines replace that electric generation capacity on the grid. So it's when we're saying take out dams, these are dams that have been built for over 100 years, and they're not super efficient. They're not producing tons of power, and they're actually pretty easily replaced on the grid.
And we've got a question on the yellow microphone there. Oh, yeah.
Hi. First, 2 bits of thank you. First to the great folks at the town of Banff who, despite Parks Canada's reluctance, were responsible for removing the 4 Mile Creek Dam. That was the mayor and the head of engineering. Had it not been for those great bureaucrats, it wouldn't have happened. Just want to... And secondly, about your film, which is just admirable. You weave so many stories through it. It's packed full of information. At some point, you've got a lot of images of river deltas and streams going back and forth, and I thought your film was very much like that. It was like a woven stream. Among the streams you left out, do you have any stories that, maybe your executive producer was too modest to be included, but maybe there's some imagery you had of him steelhead fishing on a river, or some activist-like voice that he was giving that you'd like to share with us, even though it's not in the film?
Well, he actually wasn't catching steelhead, and he was pretty upset. He wouldn't even really give us an interview.
He was pretty grumpy that day, so yeah. So that was the first time we tried to interview him on that fishing day. That didn't go too well. So we figured we better interview him again. So we put him in a wetsuit and threw him in the water below where the scissors are, thinking that cold water would, get him ready for an interview. And we didn't use that either. I don't know. It's, but he killed it up here tonight.
That's my hand doing this. So
yeah, that's yeah.
All right, we got another question on the yellow mic. Yeah.
Hi there, my name's Ben. I'm from New Zealand. First of all, I'll say, just standing here, I'm feeling very nervous asking a question in front of such a big audience, and I can feel my heart racing very quickly. And it's going faster. You know, I feel like in my time on this planet, I've seen a lot of environmental movies that sort of move me to take action. And often my mind gets in the way and life gets in the way, and I don't do anything about it. And I'm kind of scared of apathy, of just letting my mind convince me that, you know, I'll write down something on this petition, or I'm from New Zealand, so it doesn't really affect me. And then I like just being here, like among in this room where we all have a common ground. I feel like there is so much energy and there's so much connection with everyone here. We all have one thing that's so important to all of us. And just some of these films I've seen, like the climbing films, they say, you know, we often, if we try to give a reason why we do something, then we don't do it at all. And I feel like we've got this room here right now full of people with one common ground. What can we do right now before I leave and go and have a beer and forget about all this? And I guess this question to you and to the room, like, you guys painted a pair of scissors on a dam, but what can we do right now?
Yeah, well, I think tonight, and we've got these two postcards here. One's to stop this Site C dam on the Peace River, which I think, you know, if this many people right here all sent a postcard, that'd be a huge impact. And we also have a postcard to President Obama to remove those 4 Snake River dams. And that's being signed online and petitions all over the place. We've got 42,000, I think, right now. But I would just say, you know, Yvon mentioned it earlier, literally a lot of these huge dam removal projects start with one person. It's not just an exaggeration. And I was just in Finland, it was mentioned earlier, and there's this guy Jasper there that literally, he's just a fly fishing fanatic. And he is, in the last year with the film and with what he's done there, he's turned that country on its head. They were about to build a bunch of new dams, and now he's got them ravenous to remove dams. And they just voted to take out one dam, and I think another one just in the last couple of days. So it doesn't take much. I'm going to Japan in a week and going to meet this 70-year-old woman that is just this ass kicker that's removed Japan's first big dam. It's happening right now. So yeah, I'd go back to New Zealand, and there's a bunch of dams I know of that are blocking eel migration on some amazing rivers in New Zealand. So maybe you could get some of those guys taken out.
Any other questions out there? We got one down right in the front here.
We've got one up here.
Oh, sorry. The red microphone.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was an awesome, I call it a movie documentary. It was really entertaining, tons of really interesting information. You commented a couple of questions ago on the fact that most of the dams that you focused on were built a long time ago, and they don't necessarily have the environmental kind of efficiencies and so on built in. I thought it might be helpful, because you focused on the salmon so much in the U.S. context, to point out that in BC, First Nations communities, thanks to some of the constitutional rights and some of the Supreme Court rulings that have taken place, are able to play an active role in the development of small and mid-scale hydro projects, into the design of which is incorporated things like allowing for the continuation of salmon runs. And in a couple of cases on Vancouver Island, there has been, in fact, salmon run reclamation. So there is some progress to report. But then again, you get the retrograde projects like Site C, which seem to be to belong to a different century, really. So that's just a general observation. I don't know if you guys are aware of that or have any comment on that. The other thing was, in terms of the question about, what we can do next, I'm wondering if there is any sort of inventory or network of dams that are kind of obsolete, not being used anymore, that might be suitable candidates for reclamation or tearing down, and if you're aware of that or anything like that, or if maybe that might be an opportunity to kind of start some coordinated action, kind of developing a database along those lines.
Yeah, American Rivers in the U.S. has a website that's got a lot of dams listed that have come out, and also ones that are kind of people are advocating to come out. There's tens of thousands of dams that are completely filled in with sediment, serving no function, that are just a no-brainer to take out. And I would just note too, on the kind of fish passage front, a lot of the dams that came out in this film did have fish ladders and different fish passage schemes. On the Penobscot, the two dams that came out both had fish ladders, and fish ladders work well on paper, but they don't work well in reality. So I would just encourage folks to not necessarily buy into modifying a dam with a fish ladder, and really push the envelope on taking it out.
Great. Yep, we have one down here in the front on the yellow microphone.
This is just a quick, simple question for Yvon. I'm sure all of us who were here last night just really want to know if you still eat cat food.
No, I'm gone beyond cat food. No.
How about a little financial adversity as a way to compel people to be more productive in life? Do you think that helped you at all, or not?
Well, I've been accused of eating dog food, but I would never do that, let me tell you. The cat food wasn't just cat food, it was damaged cans of cat food. I used to buy them by the case, at 10 cents a can.
All right, I'll just pose a quick question to you guys, if you don't mind. When that load of sediment came out of that dam, do you know if there were sort of downstream monitoring and studies on kind of the impact of that sudden rush of sediment on the system, and how it, here we experienced a pretty massive flood a little over a year ago, and to see the rivers kind of rebound from that, and fishermen talking even this year about how they're noticing the fishing is already better. I'm just kind of curious, like that was a very compelling image in the film of that huge mass of mud coming down.
Yeah, I think with all these dam removals, it's not how to get the concrete out of the river, it's how do you deal with the sediment, and that's always the biggest engineering question. And I think with the dams in the Northwest, it was very intentional how they removed it and how they dealt with the sediment. On the white salmon, they blew a hole basically in the bottom of the dam and it all flushed out, and it was incredible to witness that. Ben was there firsthand, illegally, recording it, and it's truly powerful. And I think what's so shocking is that it just looks like this huge catastrophe for the watershed, but already there's fish above the former dam site for the first time in 100 years, and that's within months. And specifically with the Elwha, there's two reservoirs, so there's double the sediment load, and they've kind of taken their time to chip away and let that kind of go through the ecosystem. But at the mouth, at the mouth of the river, there's this huge delta that's all of the juvenile fish have rearing habitat now, and it's much more a functioning ecosystem. And that sediment is in the system for a reason. When it's starved from the system, it doesn't function as it should. And to let it loose, it impacts it for maybe a matter of weeks or months, but in the long term, it's geologic time, it's nothing, and the ecosystem comes back.
Thanks, Travis. All right, any more questions in the crowd? Okay, well, I think with that, we'll close out the evening. And one more over here. Okay, sorry, just one more, and then we'll close it out. So one question on the yellow microphone.
We'll be around to if you guys want to come up and ask us, we'll be here.
Hi, I wanted to say thanks. It was a wonderful film. I just had a quick question. When you were discussing the Alwa and they were saying that part of the deal was that they were going to put in a hatchery, and then you said, well, the fish are coming back. Have they revisited that idea and maybe decided not to do that, or what's the status of that now?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that sediment question actually too, because the argument for the hatchery was that we're going to release all this sediment, it's going to kill the watershed. So we have to have a hatchery to maintain the fish, which we know now is really not, it doesn't make any sense. And there has been a lawsuit that successfully sued to have the tribe not be able to release these hatchery steelhead into the watershed. So that's not happening. But for a bunch of reasons, they didn't successfully stop the release of salmon into the watershed. So there has been Chinook and coho salmon released from the hatchery, but not steelhead. But yeah, related to that sediment issue, 10 years ago, as a fish biologist, I thought sediment was a huge concern as well. But we're seeing now with all these dam removals that sediment's actually benefiting the coastline, like Travis said, but it's actually, these fish are so much more resilient than we give them credit for. The Condit Dam, before they even removed the dam, after the hole was blown through it, 2 months later there was steelhead 8 miles upriver jumping a waterfall. And so they can deal with these big pulses of sediment from volcanoes and big landslides and stuff, and they're well adapted. So selling a hatchery in that context just makes no sense now.
Great. There are a few more questions, but we've run out of time. So earlier tonight, I happened to go to a little reception where everybody here was down at the Patagonia store downtown. And Yvon had this great quote or saying, I'm not sure if it's yours, Yvon, but he said, turn around and take a step forward. And I think that really is the epitome of what we've witnessed here tonight. We have a whole team of agents of change on stage here who are challenging us to think differently about dams, who are challenging us to think differently about progress, who are challenging us to think differently about what it means to live simply in this world. And I encourage you to not just shed that as you exit this auditorium, to take it with you, to mull it over, to turn it into something in your own lives and build upon what you've already feel in your heart, but then transmit it into action. So on behalf of everybody at the Banff Center and on behalf of everybody who was part of the film, thank you, gentlemen, for all that you've done and given us tonight.